Welcome on, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Wait for a couple more people to enter. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christina Wigren, and I am with Stilly Valley Health Connections. I want to thank you all for joining us for today's monthly budget-friendly class, which is focused on stocking our fridges and freezers. Thank you, Kelsey, with Sound Dietitians, for being here again for this month's class. For everyone who's joining us live, please note that we are set up in a Zoom webinar format. This means that all of our participants are muted and your videos are going to be turned off so that we can record this presentation. If you would like to leave any questions or comments, we encourage you to do so by using either the chat box or the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Now I will pass it over to Kelsey. Thank you again for being here, and we look forward to learning from you today.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, thank you all for who's joined on this beautiful day. Tonight's topic is stocking and organizing the pantry, fridge, and freezer. It's part of our budget-friendly series. And we're going to just jump into it because I have a lot of information for y'all tonight. So what we'll kind of go over this evening is what exactly is a balanced meal, how to stock your kitchen to create that balanced meal, how to organize your kitchen to save time and money, some meal prepping tips, and then we'll go over some quick and easy recipe ideas based off of everything that we talk about. So, what is a balanced meal? When we're thinking about what it is that we want to put on our plate to make sure we get the nourishment our body needs, kind of divide our plate up into three sections to keep this as basic as possible. So, in one side of your plate, if you're to divide it right down the middle, would be kind of your non starchy foods. So, mostly your vegetables and some fruit. So, this would include berries, oranges, broccoli, green leafy vegetables, asparagus. There's many more things you could put here. These are just some examples. You just want to think colorful vegetables and fruit. And then on the other side of the plate, if you were to divide that in half and then in half again, we would have one corner of it be your protein source, which would be any of your meat, poultry, fish, beans, nuts, seeds, tofu, tempeh, cheese, Greek yogurt, milk, eggs. I'm sure there's some others that we could put in there, but this is a pretty good list. And not all of them, as you will see, are animal based. There's a lot of good plant based sources of protein, and that's usually a little bit more budget friendly. And then on this bottom part, you have your grain foods and starchy vegetables. This would include anything like corn, rice, quinoa, potatoes, amaranth, buckwheat, any pasta, ideally whole grain or whole wheat. And there's a lot of other grains that we could put in this section as well. These were just some examples. But pretty much what we're trying to do, what we're trying to stock our fridge and freezers and pantries with are foods from each of these categories. So when we go to create a meal, we have them on hand and we can balance our plate out in this way. So first we're going to talk about how to stock your kitchen, and the kitchen's going to include our fridge, our pantry, and our freezer. So when we're talking about that part of the plate with the grains and the starches, we want to choose our whole grains when possible. And then I kind of broke it down as like what we would typically maybe see in our fridge, our pantry, and our freezer. For grains, it's a little trickier to break it down this way just because nothing that there isn't really anything that you're gonna buy except maybe like potatoes that would go straight into the fridge. And even those we store, they're more shelf stable. But we can pre-cook a lot of these options of the grains and starches like your quinoa, your oatmeal, your farro, rice, and then just reheat it as needed. And this helps save time throughout the week. And we would most likely find once we cook these items, we would then put them in the refrigerator. So then in our pantry would be all these items like your rice, your quinoa, your buckwheat, bulgur, oats, whole grain pasta, having a couple of these on hand at all times so you know you can grab and cook them pretty quickly. And then for your freezer, again, same thing. You're not necessarily going to go to the store and go to the freezer section and buy grains or starches in the freezer section, but it's kind of after you prepare them, having some in there that you could thaw out later. And typically, you maybe not aren't gonna like freeze up a thing of rice, but you would like cook it and add it to something that is easy to freeze up, like soups or stews. And a tip is to consider purchasing a rice cooker or Instapot, as these cook these grains a lot faster, and making it easier to batch cook these items, and this will save you a lot of time. So next is that one half of your plate of the non-starchy fruits and vegetables. So this is like I broke it down into produce. And you want to have a mixture of fresh, frozen, and canned. So you know you always have something on hand. So like maybe you haven't been to the store in a long time, and so you don't have anything that's fresh. Then you know you might have something in the freezer or the fridge that you could add to a meal, so you can fulfill that part of the plate. But if we were again to break it down into those three categories, some items that I like to keep in my fridge or are a good idea when I'm talking with patients are leafy greens, celery, carrots, apples. There's obviously many more that you could add here. I put these ones because they tend to last a little bit longer in the fridge. They don't go bad super quick, and the leafy greens can be added to things really easily. Like I always try to have a clamshell or a bag of spinach, just because it can be added to soups, it can be added to smoothies, it can be added to stir fries, so many different things, and you know that you're fulfilling that vegetable part of the plate. In the freezer, I like to have, or I advise having like some peas, broccoli, stir fry mixes, frozen berries. These are all things, again, that are really easy to add into many different items and to cook quickly if you're super busy during the week, or you just have had a long day and don't want to put in a lot of effort to cooking a meal. These can be tossed into a pan and cooked up pretty quickly. And then with berries, in the dead of winter when we don't have a lot of tasty fruit available to us, or I mean, I know there's a lot of fruit at the grocery stores, but it just doesn't taste as good or it's more expensive. If we have the frozen stuff in our freezer, then it's really easy to thaw them out and throw them on top of like oatmeal, add them to smoothies, add it to cereal, just eat on their own. And they're typically the same price year round. They don't fluctuate in price. And then when we're talking about the pantry, having some canned green beans, tomatoes, pears, peaches, applesauce, just trying to choose ones whenever we looked at our canned items with no sodium or added sugar. But these are, again, options, especially in the wintertime when we don't have a lot of fresh stuff, or things tend to be more expensive than that are easy to add to different dishes or just open and eat. Something to consider if it's in your budget or if they're on sale is to buy some pre-washed and pre-cut veggies to reduce your prep time. So finding that balance of buying things that aren't pre-washed and pre-cooked, and then maybe some of the items that take a really long time, like squash. I feel like that takes a very long time to chop up and clean, and so maybe you just buy that pre-cut in the refrigerator or frozen section, just to save time, if you know you're really busy during the week. So then talking about the protein section of your plate, refrigerator items that are nice to have on hand would be like tofu, cottage cheese, other types of cheeses, Greek yogurt, tempeh, any fresh meat if that's in something that you want to have. Although those tend to be more expensive, I'd even put eggs. I know eggs are expensive. I was just researching it today. They have come back down a little bit in price, and are still a really good source of protein. So if that's something you like to eat, I would include that there too. Um, Freezer, having some pre-cooked options, so you can thaw them out and cook them up really quickly, like frozen chicken strips, fish fillets, beef patties, or bean burgers. These items typically you can throw in the oven or a pan or even the microwave, and it will cook up very fast. And then the pantry, having some canned protein sources such as tuna, chicken, beans, dried lentils, nut butters. These are all great sources of protein that are easy to open and add some other foods to. And I'll give you guys examples later. And then a tip is to consider utilizing a slow cooker. So let's say you have to work all day, or you're going to be out doing something, or you just want to cook like a large batch of something. The slow cooker is a great option to do this. And you know that you don't have to like sit over the stove and be constantly watching it. Something else that I wanted to put on here as a tip is, let's say you want to cook like some ground chicken or ground beef or ground turkey, and you only have like that one package size, but you have to feed like a lot of people, or you want to have leftovers, but you don't want to buy necessarily another one because those are kind of expensive items. A really good trick is to cook that up and then add some beans or lentils to it and mix in it. Or let's say you have leftovers of salmon, but you only have like a little bit of that, and you want to make like a salmon salad or a tuna salad, like something I did today. I only had like a little piece left, but I needed to feed 3 people. I added a can of garbanzo beans and smashed it up in there and made my tuna salad how I would normally make it, but because I added the beans, it made a lot more. And then I'm getting like a great source of fiber in there, and I didn't have to cook up something extra, and it turned out great. So that that's one little trick that we like to use and talk about. Um, and then healthy fats. This wasn't on that plate model of what we're trying to do when we're creating a balanced meal. And this is because typically when we're cooking up food, we will use some kind of oil, like olive oil, avocado oil, canola oil. So that's where we're going to get some of these healthy fats from. Or fish that falls underneath the protein category, but it also has a lot of healthy fats in it. Same with Greek yogurt. There's some good fat in there. Avocados, again, these kind of fall in other categories that are already on that plate, but they're all sources of fat. So if we're including something from this list here, then we know we're getting some healthy fats. And this is what helps us feel full and satiated, and has many different benefits for different systems in our body, like heart health and brain health. But some examples to have on hand in the refrigerator would be Greek yogurt, some avocados in your freezer. The only fat source I could think of that we would freeze would be fish, or maybe something you like pre-made and put in the freezer. Pantry, canned fish, any of your cooking oils that are liquid at room temperature. I tend to just go for olive oil. And any nut or seed butters are going to be great sources of fat. Some tips with to keep these items to last longer is you want to store your nuts and seeds in the fridge or freezer, because it is a fat and they can go rancid at room temperature, especially if like summertime and you don't have AC in your house like me. These things can get really warm in the pantry and can go bad sooner. So if you store them in the fridge or freezer, they're going to last you a lot longer. And these items tend to be more expensive, so you don't want to have to be throwing them out. And I like to tell clients or patients that I'm working with, maybe have like 1 or 2 nuts or seeds that you keep in the fridge that you can always kind of grab and go with, and add just like a pinch on salads or throw into a smoothie, or maybe put on some soups or pair with fruit and vegetables as a snack option. And then another thing you can do is make homemade dressings with olive oil, and then mix it with some like vinegar and a spice blend, which will be some other pantry items that I'm going to talk about now. But this is a way to get fat, is by putting like a dressing on some of your items. So some flavor builders and condiments. to kind of have on hand. That's good because recipes will call for it. You cook with it a lot. Would be olive oil or some kind of vegetable canola oil, a vinegar like a white one, or apple cider is my favorite personally to use. Mustard can add a lot of flavor and depth to a lot of different dishes. Tomato paste just to make like any types of sauces on in a pinch. Low sodium broth and or those bouillon cubes, hot sauce or soy sauce, just to add different flavor and styles. Try to find those in low sodium, just because this is where we tend to get more salt. Um, and then having some spices and seasonings on hand again, just to help your dishes taste yummy. Uh, have some salt for cooking. We do need it. We just want to be careful of how much we're using. Black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, really versatile. Italian seasoning or other mixed herbs that you might like. I'm really into dill right now. I feel like adding dill to different dishes adds a really fun different flavor, and you can buy that dried. Paprika and cinnamon for anything that you might be making that's a little sweeter. And then some other basics maybe to have on hand is like some shelf stable milk, or whether it's dairy or undairy, like plant based tea or coffee, if you like that to have that every day. Some baking powder or baking soda, just because those can be added to different things that we are baking, and it's nice to have it on hand and not have to run to the store for that. Flour, canned soup or chili, because you can open that up and just throw it in a pan if you're just really not feeling like cooking, and then maybe you have that spinach on hand and you just throw some spinach in there, and then you have that balanced meal. And then maybe some whole grain breadcrumbs just to help, again, create some different dishes. There, it's nice to have on hand, and they last a long time in the pantry. So when I was thinking about this presentation, I was thinking, okay, how can we save time and in help people get in the kitchen cooking and it not feel like it's overwhelming? And I've worked with a couple patients where it's been hard, like, for them to even get started because they don't know how to navigate around their kitchen, or if there's just so much stuff it feels overwhelming, so they don't want to deal with it, so then they just buy more pre-made foods or get takeout. And so maybe the first step, instead of trying to go cook something, is just reorganizing your kitchen and making it friendly to cook in and make meals in. So first step in this would be to declutter and clean out. So you want to toss expired items. Maybe there's been stuff in your pantry or fridge for a really long time that it's just time to say goodbye to. So you're not using them, and you can create room for the new stuff that you get. Donate unopened duplicates that you're not going to use. You could take them to a food bank. This will help create more room. Wipe down shelves and drawers just so you have a neat space to work with. And then reorganize shelves by category. So maybe one part of your pantry is like all your beans, another part's different grains that you have, another one's like tomatoes and sauce, like canned tomatoes and sauces. And then in your refrigerator, maybe you have your fruit drawer and your vegetable drawer, and then you have like your condiments in the door part, and just kind of coming up with an organized system that's good for you, um and that makes sense. So step 2 is use clear stackable storage so you can see what you have. So you want to store your dry goods, your rice, your oats, your pasta, in clear bins or jars. And after you've opened them, I mean, you could definitely keep them still in the plastic bag. It's just sometimes, I don't know if you've ever opened it and then gone and put it back, and then you go to grab it again because you're in a hurry, and then it spills everywhere. It also will just kind of help keep these fresher. And then you're going to use labeled baskets or bins for snacks, grains, and canned goods. So knowing what it is, that can make life a lot easier. Group items by category, like we kind of already talked about. There's spices in one section, maybe your baking stuff all in one section. And then stacking the containers in the fridge or freezer to save space. So stuff that you know you're going to keep in the fridge and freezer, having these different storage items, it makes it easier to stack them so you can see and things aren't getting like lost in the back of the fridge and then going bad. Step three, creating stations and zones. So this is like where you cook certain things in your kitchen. So maybe you have like a prep zone, and this is where all your cutting boards are, your knives, your mixing bowls, your colanders. So you for draining stuff. So maybe you have that kind of in the same area of the kitchen, so you're not moving and opening a whole bunch of different drawers when you're trying to prep stuff. And then your cooking area, that's where you would keep all your spices and your oils. Maybe the pots and pans are nearby and some utensils to easily grab. Like my stove off to the right hand side, I have like a little container for all my like mixing utensils. So if I'm standing over the stove, that I can just grab that utensil instead of having to turn. And my kitchen's very small, but just having that to be able to reach and grab instead of going for another drawer a little ways away, it just helps keep the flow going nicely, and that can cut down on time in the kitchen and cooking. um you have your pantry staples, so your beans, your grains, and your tomato paste and your seasonings maybe in one area, or you pull them out when you know you're cooking and you kind of have them on the counter. Maybe you have your quick meal zone where you have your pre-packed stuff. Like you can now buy rice and where it's like in a package, and all you have to do is throw it in the microwave and it heats up in like 1 to 2 minutes. So maybe you have a couple of those on hand, and also the ones that you need to throw into a rice cooker or on top of the stove, depending on how much time you have. But it would be organized in that way depending on what you're going to use for that night, and it's really easy to find. And then in your refrigerator, you'd have like your leftovers, reheat zone of microwave safe containers or wrap, and then it's all in the fridge, and you can easily get that out and like reheat for lunch or the next day's dinner. Step four, label and inventory. So we want to just label all our leftovers and anything that we throw in the freezer with the name and the date, so we know like how long it's been in there, and we're not throwing out things that maybe didn't need to be thrown out, or we're not trying to eat something that maybe shouldn't be eaten. So typically, rule of thumb is when you cook something up, it's anywhere from like 3 to I would say 7 days in the refrigerator, and then in the freezer usually 3 months. um I don't know, I've had stuff go longer. It's kind of up to you. You just want to use like that sniff test and make sure before eating that it hasn't gone bad. Use the first in first out rule. Older items go in the front, so again hoping that we use those items before they go bad, so we're not throwing them away, because when we're throwing away food, we're throwing away money, right? So just trying to rotate items in our fridge and freezer. You could have like a freezer pantry inventory list on the fridge. So you kind of, if you have like one of those drawer freezers or like a deep freezer, and it's hard to constantly go through it and know what's in there, if you just maybe tape a list to the top, you'll know what's in there. And then cross off used items each week to avoid double buying. There's a lot of times where I go to the store, I'm like, do I have that in there? Do I not have that in there? So just kind of rechecking those lists and updating them as much as you can, so we're not buying more things that we don't need, spending the extra money, or taking up valuable storage space. Step five is your meal prep tools. So what would we like to have in the kitchen just to make cooking meals easier? A cutting board and a knife that's easy to access. A set of small containers for portioning meals or snacks. So this is like your Tupperware or glass containers, but something that makes it easy to store them. Labels and tape for the freezer storage. So again, that would be for like the dating and naming of the items. And then a small slow cooker or toaster oven. I appliances, having a few extra appliances, they are an investment, but they can make cooking so much easier and so much faster if we have a few different items, just because like a toaster oven can cook items up pretty quickly, just because it's a smaller space for the heat to have to transfer around the food and for the actual unit itself to come to heat to cook something. And then slow cookers are just handy, like I said earlier, like you can throw it in at the beginning of the day, forget about it, and then it's ready at the end of the day. And then planning, I can't stress this enough. We can do a I have a whole presentation on planning actually. So I tried to just condense it down into one or two slides, but planning ahead of time, taking that time on like a Sunday or Saturday or Monday, like whatever works for you and your household, to plan out kind of a rough sketch of what you want to eat for dinner that week. And you could even do all three meals, but typically dinner is the one that my patients or clients struggle with the most, just because we're tired, we're busy. At the end of the day, we don't want to cook. And if we don't have a plan, then it's like it can sometimes take 30 minutes to even think of something. Um, so if we take that time, like that 30 minutes or an hour at the beginning of the week, then it can really save a lot of time during the week, a lot of money, because then we're less likely to eat out and make impulse purchases. And it can be more nutrient dense for our bodies, because when we cook at home, we're likely to follow that plate method and be meeting our needs that way. So if you have that plan, kind of making it visible and post on the fridge, like we can be flexible with it too. Like maybe you make a sketch and then you get to Wednesday and you're like, tacos don't sound good, or I have more leftovers, and I realize you don't have to cook the tacos that night. And you could have the leftovers, or you could pivot if it's easy to do. Having a shopping list pad nearby or a dry erase board to kind of keep an ongoing list. So when you do go to the grocery store, you have it all ready and you're not trying to make a list right before you go. Just kind of as the week goes on, if something runs out, or as you decide that this is what you want to make and you went through your pantry and your fridge and your freezer and you saw all the ingredients that you already had, kind of creating your shopping list off of that can be really, really helpful. Have an easy to reach recipe binder or printed favorites, or go on your phone and just look up if that's easy for you, and save some recipes there. And sometimes we need inspiration, like we get in a rut and that's a reason we end up eating more takeouts, because we don't want to cook the same thing again, or we just don't know what to cook. So maybe spending some time to find some inspiration and reading through different recipes. And then having coupons or sale flyers filed in a small tray, or maybe you have a shopping bag that you want to put them in. Or now a lot of stuff is on our phones, and there's different apps for different grocery stores, and you can go in and like clip the coupons on it within the app, and then when you go to put in your phone number for that grocery store, then it will pull up all of your coupons. I think I know Fred Meyer does that, and I want to say Safeway does it that way as well. These are some examples of meal planners and grocery lists that you could use. So you could divide it up by over here on the week, kind of write out what you want, and then go look in your pantry and see what you already have from the list of the things that you want to eat, and make a list of the things that you don't have. Or you could kind of reverse that and see everything that you have and come up with some meal ideas from that. And then maybe you would only have to buy a couple of items when you go to the grocery store, because you're planning from what you already have. So whatever works best for you, maybe play around with it week to week and see what feels better. Another way to do it is this grocery list over here. I like because it's broken down into each category to ensure that we are meeting all the different parts of the plate, the healthy plate model. So you have your grains, your fruits, your dairy, if you eat dairy, your vegetables, your protein foods, and then anything other, like the other would be like your spices, your cooking oils, anything kind of extra that you want to put over here. So this is an example of a weekly dinner plan, just to have it out on paper and see. So on Sunday, we have a rotisserie chicken that we bought pre-made because it just makes life a lot easier. Unless you have the time to like cook up your whole chicken yourself, then that's awesome. But if not, like those rotisserie chickens can save a lot of time, and they're very, very versatile. So on Sunday, you could eat it just as is and pair it with some broccoli and potatoes. And so we have the chicken fulfilling the protein category. We have the broccoli fulfilling the non-starchy vegetable fruit, which is that half a plate. We want to make half of our plate vegetables and fruit. And then we have our little starchy corner with the potatoes. Super simple. You're just steaming up broccoli, and you can steam or roast the potatoes, and within 30 minutes you could have dinner served. Maybe 35 because of how long it takes to chop up potatoes. So that this is an option. And then when you move down to Monday, you're doing the taco salad with your protein sources, now a plant-based protein source with the beans. And then you have some cheese with a little bit more protein. And then there's a little bit of avocado, but the avocado is also fulfilling that healthy fat. And so it's technically a fruit. And then you have some veggies with your peppers and your onions, and then the corn's fulfilling that starchy section, as well as like your tortilla shell. And then on Tuesday, we maybe cooked enough potatoes on Sunday to then throw, like we're making like a potato bowl that we're now throwing some of those leftovers from Sunday on top of, and maybe even some of the leftovers from Monday on top of, right? So we're throwing some of the broccoli from Sunday, maybe some of these, we cooked up extra peppers from Monday, and we're throwing that on top, maybe using the beans for Monday and throwing that on top. And then we're adding in some yogurt and salsa just to like change up the flavor profile of it. And then Wednesday, we're doing a chicken Caesar salad. Maybe you still have some of that rotisserie chicken left, depending on how many people live in your household and how far you've gone through, or maybe you bought two and then you're throwing it now on top of lettuce. Very minimal cooking, no cooking really having to go on here. And then Thursday, we're doing burritos with black beans, cheese, peppers, onions, avocado. So we're just kind of switching up how we serve some of the same ingredients. So we're not feeling like we're having leftovers, but we didn't go to the grocery store and buy a whole bunch of different things either. So it just keeps it simple, but then we're not getting bored with it because it's something different than from the tacos. And then Friday, we're making our own personal veggie pizzas with a side salad. Maybe you bought a couple heads of the romaine lettuce, or you bought a different kind of lettuce, whatever you want to do. But again, something different, easy and quick to do. And this does, I'm not going to, I know this, I'm presenting it like, oh, this is no problem. It does take practice of seeing like how you can incorporate vegetables. And so or meat or different items throughout the week, and like reusing them and repurposing them. So I wouldn't get hung up on like this is just impossible. I don't know how I don't know how to work it out this way. It's gonna take practice, and there's many different websites you could go on to research different meal plans of how to do this. You could even just practice it with like a 3-day section of the week instead of the whole week, like thinking through it. And then over time, it will get easier. So some more meal prep tips, because I feel like the more we can get this down, the more time we can save in the kitchen. And with our budgets, it also helps. So portioning out perishable foods such as your meat. So let's say there was a really good sale on like red meat, and you buy a couple packages of it, but you know you're not going to eat red meat for the entire week. So you want to freeze a part of that, and then you can either use some of it later in the week or even a couple months later. But then now you have some in the fridge and in the freezer when we think about stocking our kitchen. And then you're gonna prep out some ingredients ahead of time. So any chopping, sauteing, marinating, assembling, maybe even thawing, kind of thinking through what are some things that I could do ahead of time that are going to help me save time throughout the week. So a lot of vegetables we could chop a whole bunch on Sunday so we can throw them into salad. We could throw them into a stir fry. We could throw them into a soup. We can saute them up with just some olive oil. We could roast them. And because we've already chopped them, that cuts down a lot of time throughout the week. Stuff that could be marinated, maybe that's something you would have to do like in the morning before you're off going to work or whatever activities you have for the day. But marinating in the morning and knowing that all you have to do is throw it on the barbecue or throw it in a pan or throw it in the oven when you get home later in the afternoon or early evening, that and you're not having to do that marinating step, that will save time later and energy. Cooking extra rice, I kind of already touched on this, or noodles, or even meat earlier in the week, so you can use it later in the week, and just storing it in your fridge, labeling it when you cooked it. This can cut down on time throughout the week. And then cooking full dishes in a crock pot or a pressure cooker. So crock pots, right, you can throw in just more than just meat. You could throw in all your veggies in there and then cook your rice on the side, or even there are recipes out there where you can throw in your starch in there and you have a full meal just in one pot. Super easy to clean, which saves time. You're doing it ahead of time, so you're not having to worry about it having to cook it in the evening. And that's why I highly encourage investing in some of these appliances. So utilizing semi-prepped whole foods when it makes sense and it is budget friendly. So frozen vegetables and frozen berries and fruit are usually the same price year round. So kind of always having these on hand is really nice because you can throw these on a cookie sheet and bake them. You can add them to soups for the veggies, and then we kind of already talked about what you can do with the fruit. Broccoli slaw, I personally find cutting up, like if we want to make any kind of slaw or even cooking up a slaw in the pan, it's so nice to have this already pre-shredded and done for you because that takes up so much time. And usually the price difference isn't that extreme from buying a head of broccoli and some carrots to having the convenience of something like this. Some of these cauliflower rices, I'm fine with regular rice. Just wanted to show you an example. But again, this is something that cooks up in 90 seconds. And I have, like, at Costco, they have those white rice with the cilantro mixed into it. And I had that the other day and it was actually pretty tasty and so convenient. Cause like even with my rice cooker, I didn't want to wait a half hour to have to cook something up. And then you have your 10-minute farro or barley here at Trader Joe's. If you have a Trader Joe's near you, those are really convenient. And then some of the spices and herbs, like garlic, can kind of be a pain to peel or mince up. So just buying it pre-minced is kind of one of those investments. Yeah, it's going to be more than a head of garlic, but it can save a lot of time, and it lasts a fair amount of time in the refrigerator. So some other meal prep tips is to defrost food efficiently and safely. You want to cut food into smaller pieces, and this will help it cook faster. You pre-soak your beans if you are buying beans in like their raw form. I personally just buy them canned because it's a lot easier, but if you want to buy them in the dried form, then pre-soaking them will help them cook faster later. Decide your prepping order. So kind of pre-look at a recipe and see how long it's going to take you to cook. Do you need to preheat an oven? Do you need to chop a whole bunch of stuff first, and kind of figure out how you can multitask it to make it go faster and what order you should prep things. And a lot of recipes these days are on like blogs that you can see how to do that how that person that created that recipe to do it in an efficient manner, and it's really, really helpful. Use wider, more shallow pans when you're cooking so the heat can spread more evenly and it will cook faster. I already said preheat your oven if you need to. utilize a meat mallet or tenderizer, and that will help break down kind of those protein structures so your meat will cook faster. And you want to choose quicker cooking proteins and vegetables. Um, some things cook a lot faster, like, well, tofu you don't even have to cook, but it cooks fast. Steaming broccoli can cook really fast, whereas like carrots take a little bit longer. Your greens, you don't even have to cook them, or you could just saute them up very, very quickly just to help save time. And then make large undressed salads for the week. So you can create like a salad bar in your refrigerator where you have like your lettuce already pre-chopped, maybe you have some tomatoes that are pre-washed, you have like canned olives that you can grab really quick, maybe a can of artichokes that you can grab really quick, whatever it is that you like to put on your salad, maybe pre-cook some quinoa. But it's all there. It's all in your labeled containers, and then all you're doing is pulling from each container to throw in a bowl and make your salad really quickly. So your more meal prep tips. If you're living in a household with a large family, get the family involved to help save time. Give them each a task. Um, Ask what people want for the week, so we're not battling. Like if you have kiddos and asking what they want to eat earlier on, then they have a say, and then they're less likely to refuse the meal and more likely to want to eat it. Plan meals, like I said, around what you already have in your pantry to avoid having to buy a lot of items when you go to the grocery store. Serve no cook meals like salads or stuff that maybe you already cooked up that can be served cold. Canned tuna fish with on top of lettuce. It comes together very quickly and can be a complete meal. Cook when you have more time and make one dish meals. So think about the nights that are going to be really crazy and maybe make those the leftover nights. And then the nights that you have a little bit more time, you cook bigger batches. Okay, some other tips. Select recipes appropriate for your skill level. So if you haven't done a lot of cooking, don't go choose a really complicated recipe. Maybe just think of cooking separate components that can steam up, roast up, barbecue. Very, very simple, not something that you're having to, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a souffle or something, like some crazy French recipe or something that's really, really tricky and you have to really pay attention to it. Go with your skill level. It will still taste delicious and you'll enjoy it. Consider prepping 2 to 3 meals in one day if you have the time. So this is batch cooking. And double up when you make a sauce or soup and freeze half so you can use it at another time. So the formula for quick meals is you have your protein plus a veggie plus a starch plus your flavor or fat, and then this equals a balanced meal. So this is just a different way to look at that plate that I presented at the beginning of the class. Examples of these meals are chicken chili. So you can buy canned chicken, tomato sauce, beans, frozen veggies of choice, and just throw it all together in a pot, let it heat up, and voila, you have a balanced meal. Lentil stew. I love lentils. They're an amazing plant-based protein source. People usually digest them really well. They have a ton of fiber. And they're really, really versatile. You can make a stew and add veggies, or you could just cook up some lentils and throw it on top of some like a lettuce bowl and make a salad. Salmon bowls, so you steam your rice. You have a handful of spinach that you could throw in there, or other steamed veggies, and then some canned salmon if you don't want to cook up salmon, and then you just throw that all together, and it will come. It's very balanced, and you can add different sauces or dressings on top to change up the flavor profile, and it's very enjoyable and a nice balanced meal. And then a tuna and rice bake, that's kind of what this picture is over here. It's one pan, You're cooking up your rice, you're adding in some veggies, and then throwing in some canned tuna on top. So minimal mess, minimal cleanup, saving time. You're using a canned version of a fish, which is usually more budget friendly, and it's very, very simple. Um, More examples, a potato patch. So I have a picture of this, so I'll show this in a minute. Kitchen sink nutrient bowls. So like looking in your refrigerator and knowing that you have some pre-cooked grains and then just throwing stuff on top of it. It doesn't have to be a recipe. You could just throw, like, you have some leftover roasted vegetables and you maybe have a little bit of avocado, and you have some spinach, and then, oh, there's a little bit of chicken from last night, I'm gonna throw that on top. Or wait, I don't have a protein source. Okay, go to your stocked pantry and just throw some garbanzo beans on top of there, and now you have all the different components. You throw on a yummy dressing, voila, comes together very quickly. We already talked a lot about slow cooker meals. You could do toaster oven, build your own flatbread pizzas. So instead of getting pizza that, I mean, you could totally do takeout, but as an option to save money, and make it more nutrient dense, making your own pizzas is really fun. It's really fun if you have kiddos, and you can add a lot of veggies to it and make it more nutritionally balanced. A pre-made salad mix. So just, this is one of those times where you opt to buy the vegetables in a bag, and then you throw in some roasted chickpeas on top, and done. Dinner's done. You could make breakfast for dinner. Breakfast is usually a quicker meal to make, and it's something fun. It's changing it up. So potato patch. Potato patches, when maybe you steam up a whole bunch of potatoes and then you stuff them with different stuff. So you could throw in some of that roasted broccoli or steamed broccoli, some cheese, some beans, some salsa, maybe a little bit of bacon bits. Um, so many different things that you could do within these, but this is just an example and a way to meet all those components of the plate and have a balanced meal, but it's served in a different fun way, makes it more interesting. Build your own nutrient bowl. So I kind of touched on this, but this is a way to see, if you were to break it down by category of all the different protein sources you could use, the vegetables and the fruits, the whole grains and the sauces, and then assembling them together. So if we were to look at these pictures, we have sweet potatoes, egg, and avocado. So this maybe would be more of like a breakfast bowl, but your sweet potatoes are your starch, your egg is your protein, avocado is some extra fat, and then it looks like within the potatoes they put like green peppers and like some leafy greens, so then you're meeting that vegetable side. Over here we have like a salmon bowl, so with a little bit more like Asian profile, so it's a different than maybe this like chipotle profile here. And there's salmon, cucumbers, red cabbage, maybe some fruit, even some mango, and it's probably on top of like a bed of rice. And then here, this one, there's some tofu. Edamame is another great plant-based source of protein, different veggies, rice, and sesame seeds. And then kind of the same thing is going on over here. It's just adding a few different fruits to change up the profile. Oh, and they have some garbanzo beans and quinoa. Quinoa is another really nice plant-based source of protein, but it also fulfills that grain section as well. So to recap, keep your pantry and freezer stocked with sources of protein, whole grains, and vegetables. Think of that healthy plate model. Spend time to organize the kitchen, declutter, create stations, label, and inventory. It's going to feel really good just to kind of go through and see everything that you have, and then B, just make it a kitchen more accessible and easier to work in. Choose 1, maybe 2 days a week to meal plan and grocery shop. When planning, look at items you already have on hand to keep costs down, and then create that list from what you already have. And utilize semi-prepped whole foods to save time when it fits into your budget, and then also consider batch cooking to save time. And I believe that is all I have this evening. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to Stilly Valley and Christina. And if you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. That was a great class. I do just want to let everyone know while we're waiting to see if any questions come through. As you're leaving today's class, there's a quick 6-question survey that'll pop up on your screen. If you guys have any ideas for future classes or any suggestions, we'd love to hear them. So that is your opportunity to do so. Additionally, this is just one of many webinars that we have scheduled with Sound Dietitians. We will be back for another budget-friendly class next month in August. And so check out our website, stillyvalleyhealth.org, and we'll also have those on our Facebook. If you guys have any further questions, then you can also feel free to contact me. And everyone says thank you. Kelsey, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think I know it was a lot of information. I meant to say this earlier. Just pick one goal, like one small thing from maybe that you learned or you want to try, and just focus on that. Don't try to do everything overnight or in the next week, because we know with research that when we set small goals, where it's more likely to be sustainable, and you can add to it really easily. So thank you for joining, and I hope it was helpful.
I love that advice. Thank you for adding on. Someone said, "Where is Stilly Valley?" We are located in Smoky Point in Arlington, Washington. We are in the old Alfie's Pizza building next to Rite Aid for anyone who lives in the area. All right, well, I don't see any others. Thank you again, Kelsey, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. I hope that you all have a great rest of your week.
Thank you,
All right,
Christina. Have a good night.
you too. Bye.